Everyone, and welcome back to the Nova Nihongo podcast. I'm your host, Tanner, and today we're going to do kind of a Japanese centered episode. So, if you guys don't know, I am a Japanese teacher on Preply, and I've been doing that among other teaching things for this is my second year doing it, and I absolutely love it. So, Japanese has been in my life for a long time, and now that I am proficient enough and confident enough, I started teaching it, and I absolutely love it. I started by teaching English at first, and I just couldn't do it. I just don't have that connection to English. Obviously, I'm a native English speaker, but it just doesn't come naturally to me to teach it. I think that's just me. Some people are doing well teaching their native language, but it just didn't work for me because it just takes way too much brain power to think through English right now, I guess. I don't know. That might change in the future, but I'm absolutely loving teaching Japanese. So, it's so much fun. For a while, I've been working with several students, and I have several students that are going to be taking the JLPT, and it's just been a really great ride this last few months of working with them for JLPT. So we'll be doing much more come December too. So we still have time. I'm recording this as of March, so we still have a lot of time before the JLPT. So it'll be interesting ride because a lot of them have never taken it before. So it'll be interesting. So, today we're doing a special Japanese edition of what I would do if I was going to start Japanese over. If I had never studied it before, and what I would do to actually learn it starting now in 2026. So, I started learning back in 2020. So, I am coming up on 6 years of learning Japanese. So, if I were to start over, or if I just never learned it in the first place, this is what I would do. So, the first thing I always tell everybody is learn hiragana first, which is exactly what I did back in 2020. So, I did that part right, I think. So, learning hiragana first will make it a lot easier for you to associate Japanese as its own thing, as its own language, as opposed to connecting it to your native language, whether it be English, Spanish, anything else. So, Japanese has its own three writing systems of hiragana, katakana, and kanji. So, hiragana is the main one that they use for actual Japanese words, the one that they create. Katakana is used for loan words from other languages, and kanji is taken from Chinese. Of course, different pronunciation than Chinese, but the meanings are about the same. So I would definitely start with learning hiragana first, because that will help you with vocabulary and learning verbs and verb conjugations. It just gives you a good foundation. So I definitely did that. I did some flashcards with it. I did Quizlet. I did physical flashcards. I think I mostly did physical flashcards back then. I didn't really use Quizlet for Japanese until later. I've never been a fan of Anki. That's just my personal opinion. But if Anki works for you, then great. I just don't connect to it very well. It's hard for me to use it, and the user interface is just not great, in my opinion. But if Anki is what you want to use, that's great. All you really need to know is using things from memorization. There are a lot of things that you can try and do. So just try some different methods and see what works best for you. So after learning hiragana, I would start with some basic vocabulary, meaning just some basic nouns, basic verbs, maybe a few basic greetings here and there. But I wouldn't spend too much time on that right now because it will be easier as you go down the line getting more comfortable with the pronunciation of Japanese and memorizing it. So I wouldn't stress too much about it. A lot of language learners or some teachers or polyglots say, like, memorize the first 100 words, then the first 500, or I've seen in some books and things that they do like the first 625 because they're the most commonly used words that you'll ever see. I don't recommend doing that until later. I think you should get a foundation of grammar and vocabulary before you start just memorizing a whole bunch of words, because you're not really going to know what to do with it until you actually start understanding grammar. So I would keep your beginning word list lower than other people would recommend, I think, and then get started with your grammar foundation. I think a lot of the time people will recommend doing vocabulary first because it's just a matter of memorization, right? And grammar is hard for a lot of people. That's usually the litmus that I get from other people of like, oh, I'm so bad at grammar, but I can memorize words. Grammar comes so easily to me. I think of it as putting together a puzzle. But vocabulary, I'm like, I don't want to sit here and just work through flashcards all the time. It's exhausting for me and it's annoying. So I always start with grammar, and it'll also get you a stronger foundation of how to use the words that you do memorize. So I recommend starting with grammar. So with grammar, I would start with some basic verb conjugations. Figure out the polite form, which is the must form of verbs in Japanese. There are 3 different types of verbs, so they have to be conjugated a little bit differently. We have u verbs, ru verbs, and irregulars. So figuring out how to do that first will be your first step, which I think one day I'll probably post a tutorial video on how to do Moss form. And then my other parts of my course will be available to everybody later. So that's what I recommend starting with. After that, I would start building on your vocabulary a bit and work on some particles also. Particles are things that mark the different parts of speech in a sentence. So whatever the subject is, what the object of the sentence is, marks the direction or by means of doing something, like by transportation or using an item, all those different things. There's so many more, but those are some examples. We don't necessarily have those in English, but Japanese, Korean, languages like that, those are very common and very important. So I would say your first 3 steps would be hiragana first, then do a little bit of grammar with verb conjugations, and then go to particles, all while building up a little vocabulary here and there. I wouldn't stress about it too much at the moment, but it'll come as you go. Something that I wish that I did sooner with my Japanese studying would be reading. I did a lot of speaking and listening first, which is great, but I wish that I incorporated more reading in there. I think that reading is really important as a more passive exercise, just to be experiencing the language more. Maybe reading Japanese short stories or children's books or things like that can really help get your reading up at a basic level, because essentially when we start a new language, we're learning like we're kids again. So reading children's books seems appropriate. There are a lot of people that are against reading children's books for language for some reason, but I always think that it's a great idea. You're rewriting how your brain interprets a language, just like kids do when they first learn their first language when they're young. So, reading kids' books in Japanese, I mean, you're on the same language level as the kids would be, so why not have some fun with it? I see no issue with it. Or you can find your old childhood show or something and dub it in Japanese just to hear the language. I'll tell you a story. I started looking at some of my old childhood shows and changing them into Japanese, which was hilarious. It was so funny. Like, use those shows that you used to watch all the time that you could like quote in your sleep, and then you know exactly what's happening because you've seen it 12,000 times. But then you'll hear it in Japanese and be like, whoa, this is weird. Like, it's really funny. I watched the Backyardigans and Lab Rats in Japanese, which that dates how old I am. I'm a early Gen Z, essentially millennial. So yeah, Backyardigans was my show. So was Lab Rats. I can still quote all of Lab Rats. So I dubbed both of them in Japanese, and I'm just like, this is so funny. So I think that that would be really fun for some people to do if they want to see some old shows, or even the shows that you watch now as an adult, like things like Friends or Big Bang Theory, because they're about everyday things. So that's another way that you could pick up some extra vocabulary just by watching a show that you've seen a lot. Like Friends especially has been recommended a lot because it's just about everyday things of relationships and going to work and being with your friends and dating, marriage, having kids, all of those things you can pick up from just the show. So I think that would be really cool. When I was first learning Japanese, I know that kanji was pretty difficult for me. Kanji is just overwhelming. And it still kind of is to an extent. I'm working through N3, N2 levels of kanji, and it's pretty difficult sometimes. So, one thing that really helped me later on with kanji, I wish I had found it earlier, was kanji radicals. So, if you don't know what radicals are, kanji radicals are little parts of the kanji that are put together to make, the big picture itself. So, if you see like 3 lines on the left side of the kanji, for example, that would be the radical for water. So it really depends on, of course, where the placement is and the kanji itself. But look up some kanji radicals. The dictionary online called Jisho.org has a lot of radicals in it. If you look up a certain kanji, it can tell you what the radicals are, and you can kind of go down a rabbit hole of how all the kanji in the radical are connected. So if there's the water radical on the side, it'll be connected that way. So it'll have, sea or lake or pool or any of those kinds of words. So if you know your radicals, it can kind of help you deduce the meaning of the kanji that you've never seen before. So when I found those in college, it was so helpful. I wish I had known about that earlier, but now I know. And it's been helping me through N3 and N2. Another thing that I would recommend, I actually did do this when I first started. I would recommend meeting with a tutor online. That would be either Italki or Preply, or back in the day when it was actually user friendly, it'd be Amazing Talker. Now it's not so user friendly. It doesn't have a great UI situation, but it was good back in 2020. But now I would recommend more Italki or Preply. Speaking with not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a native speaker, but a very comfortable speaker when you're a beginner in Japanese and comfortable with the pronunciation and the vocabulary and everything that goes into learning a language when you're a baby beginner. A lot of that would be helpful in a safer environment where you're like, I don't want to stumble over my words. I'm nervous and I'm afraid to speak. If you're afraid to speak your first language that you learn, that's completely normal. I promise. You're not alone when that happens. It's intimidating. It's something brand new that you're not fully comfortable with, and you don't want to offend anybody if you say something wrong, which is definitely possible, and I've probably done before. But that's completely normal. So meeting with a tutor that's like, hey, I'm in this situation with you. I've done this before. I know exactly what you're feeling. Let's work together on how to do this the best way for you. So Italki or Preply would definitely be the best idea for those, and you can get lessons as low as $5. Obviously, I recommend Preply because I'm biased and I teach there, but I also have used Italki a lot too, so I use both. And if you're interested in learning Japanese from me, shameless plug, my link is going to be in the description of this video. I teach adult beginners, basic to intermediate Japanese. Something else that can help you, it just depends on the type of learner that you are, is to get a solid textbook to follow. I recommend Genki because I used that back in college and it worked well for me. It has Genki 1 and Genki 2, so it'll get you up to about N4 level of the JLPT. And then when you move on from that, you got to find another resource. But I think it has a really good foundation of how to do reading and how to do kanji, how to do grammar, vocab, all that stuff. I used it in college and I really enjoyed it, and it was really helpful and easy to follow for the most part. So I recommend Genki. Some people use Minna no Nihongo, which I've heard good things about. I've never used it personally, but I've heard some good things about it. And then there are also some other options that you can use, like Japanese for Busy People, which I like. I use that. I'm using the third edition. That's the more advanced edition of it. I would obviously start with the first and then move up to the third as you go. And then if you're wanting to do specifically JLPT studying, I would recommend the Try series and then the Shinkansen Masters. All of these will be listed in the description box below. It's a great foundation to find out how you learn best, whether that's visual, audio, any of that. Tweak whatever you see in this video or any other videos that you watch. Tweak what works for you. Whatever works better for the type of learner that you are, adjust it. If you don't do so well reading, do some listening in podcasts, for example. If you want more visual things, look at some YouTube videos that walk you through and write with you on how to do these grammar points or these kanjis. So there are a lot of options and a lot of resources that you can use. There are also a lot of really good books to teach how to learn a language. Not necessarily the language itself, but how to learn a language. I think my favorite book right now that I've been reading is Fluent Forever by Gabrielle Weiner. I'm really enjoying it, and it's really comfy to read. I don't know how to describe it other than that. It's a nice, comfortable read, and it's very interesting. They talk about the self-studying methods and then how it works in schools, which I'm going to talk about that in a later episode. But it's really interesting how our brains process language and our brains adjust differently. So obviously we have different types of learners. So it's a matter of figuring out what works best for you and however you want to learn. So after you get a good foundation of writing and then starting some grammar and some vocabulary, I would start listening to native Japanese content. Obviously, I said before that you can dub your favorite show in Japanese if you want to. But it's a little different than actually watching native Japanese content like anime or J-dramas or even listening to Japanese music. there's a complete difference between something that goes from English to Japanese to native Japanese, obviously. So I would recommend finding something like that, so where you can watch the show and listen to the Japanese, but you also have the English subtitles there if you need it. There are some really good animes on Crunchyroll that a lot of people like. For me, I've been watching Tokusatsu, which is basically Japanese Power Rangers. If you want to know more about me and being a geek on Japanese Power Rangers, go listen to my host background episode, my first episode. So I've been watching a lot of Super Sentai and Kamen Rider and anything in that realm, and that's been my native Japanese content that I've been loving for years now. So, and if you want to get into Kamen Rider or Super Sentai, I recommend Kamen Rider X-Aid and probably Gokaiger for Super Sentai. Kyuranger is my favorite, but Gokaiger is a really good start. They also have a lot of good music, so I have some of that in my playlist also, some of the Kamen Rider and Super Sentai songs that they've got, and it's really good music. But then also, I listen to J-pop, so I enjoy BabyMetal, and I like Phantom Siita, which is both of them are more dark girl groups. I don't like the super cutesy girl groups like K-pop has a lot, but I like the dark fantasy girl groups. So that's my recommendation for that. I'll do a whole episode on music later on. Just start getting comfortable and listening to. So this beginner phase is probably going to take a while to get through, you know? You're starting a brand new language, starting to change your brain on how it develops a language. So it'll take some time, but don't get discouraged with yourself if you're like, I'm not making enough progress. That's fine. Don't compare yourself to all these other online polyglots because some of them lie on YouTube, especially of like, I learned this language in 7 days or in 30 days or whatever. That's not possible. It's not. Just remember that because a lot of it is just lies. It just is. It's clickbait, it's rage bait, any of that. So focus on yourself and your own progress. Yeah, there's a really good community on Instagram of some language learners with me and some of my friends, and we all encourage each other. It's not a comparison game like that. It's all, oh, this is what we're struggling with, this is what we're working on, here are some of our study plans. It's all authentic over there. It's not super clickbaity like some things on YouTube can be. So I would recommend avoiding that if you can, and then come join our study community in Instagram. So finding people that will help motivate you is really helpful when it comes to learning a new language. Finding people on Instagram would be good, or on Facebook. Facebook groups have some things like that too. So it'll just take some effort. It'll take time. It will. You'll get discouraged sometimes. You'll slow down sometimes. You'll be like, why am I not understanding this? Why am I not making progress? And that's completely normal. Sometimes you just need to take a break, walk away, and then come back to it. Or just talk to somebody about it and be like, okay, there's this one grammar point that I just can't seem to get. Can you help me? There's no shame in asking for help with those kinds of things. So if there's anything specific to Japanese that you need help with, my DMs and my comments are always open. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Japanese can kind of seem like a very intimidating language, which I don't blame you. We have so much good content and anime and TV and music. It's so great, but then when you go to actually learn the language, you're like, what have I gotten myself into? Like, it's a lot. It really is. There's not a lot of other languages that have three different writing systems and that's completely backwards grammar from English. So it really can be overwhelming to you, but I promise you it's worth it. If you're looking for a good way to get started with Japanese, obviously I am a teacher, but I'm also a creator of a online course which is called Nova Nihongo, which is all about learning Japanese for beginners. We have a community, we have courses, we have practice and events and all that fun stuff. So that is also in the description if you are interested in joining that. So thank you guys for listening to this podcast episode. I'm really hoping to roll out some more things specific to Japanese because obviously that's my favorite language and definitely my most proficient language comparatively. So yeah, I will see you guys next time. Bye.